But one thing I do, forgetting the things behind and reaching forward to the things before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Jesus Christ. Now, what we would like to do, as we have already taken a look at this, is to consider this thought. You are set for a race today. Now, many of us began our race some time ago. Some of us wish we could reset the race and start all over. Let us consider this, and let us consider our race day by day. All right, that was my race yesterday. Maybe I wasn't that good at it. Now, right now, we're engaged in the Olympics, and everybody's trying to get that gold. And we're rooting America on. We want to see those Americans get gold every time. But as I was watching these skaters, and as the husband threw the wife and she was spinning through the air, she didn't make the landing. And then I was watching the husband as he came around and he's going real fast and he fell. And I thought, oh, guess what we're not getting, right? All right, forget that race because they got another one tomorrow. And so they got to forget what they did yesterday. And maybe that's the same thing for you and me. Maybe our yesterday wasn't as good as we would have liked, but our today is a new race. It's another race. It's a continuing process. We are setting our goal on Jesus Christ. Let's consider it this way. So here we are. You've got your lane. You are going to run this race toward heaven. All right. But before you get started, you have to put yourself in the starting blocks. When I was a kid in high school, you wouldn't believe it by looking at me, but I used to put my feet in those starting blocks. We would get ready to run. Maybe it was the 440. Maybe it was a 100-yard dash. Maybe it was the 50. Maybe it was the mile that we had to run. And we would put our feet in those blocks. And I looked somewhat like that back in the day. I didn't have this to weight me down back then, okay? But here's the idea that Paul has. We're at the starting block. And so he says to us, forgetting at this point, forget the things that are behind you. Maybe yesterday I ran a race and there were 12 guys in the race and I came in 13th. Maybe I stumbled. You ever see that? We've seen that. We've watched the Olympics before, and those runners are running, and just before they get to the finish line, a leg will cramp up, and down they go. We have seen them for whatever reason. Maybe another runner crosses over into their lane and trips them up, and down they go. And they have spent their entire life preparing for a particular race. And the day of the race comes, and all of that practice, all those years and years of training are lost at the finish line. And we feel so bad for them. All right, you're at the starting block now. Forget about that. Forget about your failings. Concentrate. These runners, when they get to that finish line, they're not thinking about anything. They're not thinking about anything except for the race they're in right now. You can't consider for a moment your failings. Maybe I ran on this exact track yesterday. And so maybe as I look around, I think to myself, that's where I fell. Or that's where I got tripped up. And then I begin to think, what if it trips me up again? You can't be thinking about how you failed in the past if you are going to make it toward heaven. That's all under the blood. I go to Jesus Christ, as it says for me to do in 1 John, and I confess my sins, and He is faithful and just to forgive me of my sins and to cleanse me from all unrighteousness. So I don't carry that load of sin with me because it has been washed away. When I confess my sins, He washes it away and cleanses me from all unrighteousness. God knows me. And God sees me even now as I am seated in heaven with Jesus Christ. He sees me as though I've already finished the race. He sees me as though I've already won the crown. I'm, though, here in this particular race, and I'm remembering yesterday. I'm remembering my failures. And Paul's saying, don't do that. Don't do that. Maybe I'm remembering my sins. How this sin, we're told by the writer that there is that sin which so easily besets us. The sin that gets you may never get me. There are some things that don't trouble me in this life. And there are some things that are. Now, I'm not going to tell you the things that do, because you might be out there wanting to tempt me and say, oh, I know how he fails. I'll do this. And sure enough, I'll fail. There is that sin that so easily, Paul says, so easily. I mean, the mere mention of the sin, and we're ready to stumble. There are some sins that don't affect you. My dad, for example, was an alcoholic. Alcohol has never been a temptation of mine. It just isn't there. For some people, it's drugs, and that again, never been a temptation. I mean, I have had it placed in my hands. I'm sorry, I don't care to. I have, people will give it to you for free, especially when I was a young man back in the Navy. I traveled the world, and there are places in this world where they'll share. I don't care. It has not entered into this body. It has never been a temptation. It has never been something that easily besets me. But there are those folks that it does. Anger for some, have a hairpin trigger. Anger that's not one of those things that's so easy. Now, I won't tell you, like I said, the things that do. I'm just telling you the things that don't. And I won't even make that a long list, because, hey, you might figure out through extrapolation or something what mine is. But at the starting block, I am not going to think on my failures, and I'm not going to think on my sins. Even the one that I know so easily besets me, that was yesterday. Today, I'm going to trust in the Holy Spirit. I'm going to trust in Jesus Christ, and I'm going to continue this race of mine. At the starting block, I'm forgetting those things that are behind me, my failures and my sins. When Jesus Christ washed me clean, that's good enough for me. As I run toward the mark, I'm not afraid of running toward heaven. I'm not worried that at the end they'll close the gate on me. I can run full speed into, we'll save that for when I get there. But runners don't slow down. You don't slow down even at the finish line. That's a time to cut in the engines and to speed it up. Why? You're not afraid. You don't have to stop on the line. It's not like you got to stop on a dime. Oh, here comes the finish line. I got to stop. No, you run past. We were always taught when I was coached, you run past the finish line. You run past it. You don't even look. You look beyond the finish line. Because if I get out there, I know I've passed here. At the starting block, though, forget my failures, forget my sins. I'll tell you something else you should forget. Forget your victories. You know, the problem with winning is people have a tendency to sit there. There are those who remember their past glories and don't do anything tomorrow. Because, hey, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And Paul says, I'm getting ready. I can't sit there and think about my past glories. Well, you know what? I won that crown yesterday. As a matter of fact, I was the fastest guy out here yesterday. I look around, it makes me content. And some guy that I beat yesterday is going to work a little bit harder today to make sure I don't lose. So we don't sit back and count on our past victories. You ever watch those disclaimers? Or I should say not watch them, but listen to them on the radio or on TV. And in fact, when they're telling you about stock, maybe you should invest in gold. That's on like every 2 minutes, right? Buy gold, buy gold, buy gold. And what does the guy say at the end? Past performance is not an indicator of future. Listen, once you give us your money, it's a good chance it's gone. Just because yesterday the market went up doesn't mean the market will go up today. We've seen some of that this week where the market was going and going, and then all of a sudden it stopped, and for 2 days it took about a 2,000-point drop. Now, if you had bought the night before, you lost a chunk of change. Now, most of us in our retirement, we leave it in there, and over the long run, we do well. But day by day is a dangerous thing, because what goes up does come down. And the market tends to do this. But the idea is, in the end, as it goes up and down, it ends up higher here. Look at the market 20 years ago. A good day, if it hit 1,000 points, we were jumping up and down. If it hit 1,000 points tomorrow, we'd all be devastated because we're at 26,000 points now. We have gone steadily up and down, but we've gone up and down in an upward motion. And that's really how our lives are. Our day to day, I have these failings, I have these sins. I may be considering my victories, but my day to day, today I'm here, tomorrow I'm there. But the idea is, in the end, I'm going to be up there. When I finish my race, I will be in glory. When I finish my race, I will be looking face to face at Jesus Christ. When I finish my race, I will be before the Father's throne. I will definitely finish higher than I started. And so, forgetting the things that are behind, Paul says to us. He moves on to another point then. We're actually in the race. We forgot about those things that are behind. We have left the blocks, and now we have begun to run. And so in my race, what is Paul's encouragement to us? Keeping my eye on the goal. I am running to there. In the old Olympic Games, now I don't know this from practical knowledge. I know this from books. Okay, the judges or the setters up of the old Olympic Games back in Greece, they would take a stake or a stick and they would pound it into the ground way out there. They measured it out. If it was a 100-meter race or a mile race, whatever it was, they would take a stick and they would pound it out in the field way out there. All the racers are back here and they could see that stick way out there. That was the finish line. There'd be a little flag on it, and their job was to run, touch that flag, and to be the winner, to grab that pennant off of that post. Whoever grabbed that pennant was the winner. And so they were all in the race, and once they left their starting blocks and they shot out there, they never stopped looking at the finish line. They were always looking at that banner. They were always looking at that flag on that post. Why? They were always reaching for it. You notice when runners run, they stretch out their bodies. They are pulling. And their whole idea is, as their eyes are forward, their hands reach, and your hand pulls your foot. And they keep reaching for that. They switch and they reach, and they're constantly straining every muscle in their body. You don't run like Usain Bolt if you jog like I do. I tried to run once, pulled a hamstring. Okay, it's just not in me. But this race, this spiritual race that I am in, I can engage myself 100% in this race. These men, as they're engaged in the race, you could see every muscle in their body is pulling. I mean, their arms are pulling. Their legs are pulling. Their hands are pulling. They're trying might after might to pull themselves. They have to be engaged completely and fully. Every ounce of their body is engaged in the fight. They do not win if you do not struggle harder than the man next to you. You have got to pull yourself up a little bit harder. You have got to push those legs a little bit more. The guy who can pull and push the fastest is the guy who's going to win. And so as I am engaged in this race, Paul says, I am setting Jesus before me. What is my target? Paul says, listen, in this race, in this life, I want to attain Jesus Christ. He is my goal. So instead of a stick with a flag waving in the wind, I see Jesus Christ. And I keep Jesus in front of me. He is always my goal. He is always my finish line. I am always running toward Him. And as long as I am running toward Him, I am going to stay on track. I am not going to get lost. I will keep Him before me, and I will pull myself with all that I have, spiritually speaking, to attain Him. And so as these men struggle in their body, we struggle in our soul. We fight. The problem with so many Christians, the reason we do not have a Christian testimony, the reason that we do not make a difference in people's lives, is we're not struggling for it. We're not working hard to make a difference in people's lives. I struggle not to attain. I'm not struggling to get to heaven. I could walk there. The difference in this race is I've got spectators who are watching. And these spectators need to see my performance to inspire them perhaps, to get them in the race maybe. Or so that I could have a testimony that will cause them to say, I want this same thing. I want to set Jesus in front of me and I want to go. We probably know more people who are on their way to hell than we know who are on their way to heaven. Simply by the fact that Jesus said, narrow is the way that leads to heaven and wide is the path that leads to destruction. Most people on this earth, as sad as it is to say, most people are going to spend eternity in hell. Very few will be saved because very few Christians even bother to tell other people of Jesus Christ. Very few Christians bother to tell their friends, their neighbors, the kids at school, the people at work. We tend to keep silent. Well, it's something that I should keep to myself. But in this race, as I set Jesus Christ before me, I am engaged in a race for a purpose and a reason. And part of that race is not just to win Jesus Christ, but it is to inspire those who are looking on to join the race themselves. Heaven is our destination. I am not engaged in the things of this world. I do not look around at me and say, I wish I had some of that, I wish I had some of that, I wish I had some of that. I look toward heaven and say, I can't wait to get there. I'm not looking always at a bigger home or a newer car. I need a car that gets me back and forth to work, and I'm happy with that. I got a 2004. Hey, 2004 is a great year, especially if you happen to drive a Mustang. It was a wonderful year for Mustang. It wouldn't bother me. Listen, if it was a 1964, I'd have a bigger smile on my face. I don't need a brand new shiny car every year. I have friends who buy brand new shiny vehicles, and let me tell you, their vehicles cost more than my first house. It costs more than my second house. I mean, they are spending so much. It's taken them 6-8 years to pay off a car. And they're paying upwards of $400 to $600. I know a fellow paying $800 a month. My first house cost me $500, and he's paying $800 for a truck, a car that's going to end up in a rust pile. Probably about the last day he makes the last payment, boom, there goes the car. But I would rather keep my eye on that prize. I don't need to impress people with what I'm driving. I would rather impress people with who I am than what I have. Because if who I am is not impressive, what does it matter what I have? People can ooh and ah at my house. Listen, when I'm dead and gone, that house will still be there. When I'm dead and gone, that car will still be there. So what do I care? That people should ooh and ah at the things I possess. I should rather have them ooh and ah at by whom I am possessed. I would rather have people excited about Jesus Christ than anything else. That's my race. Heaven is my destination. And what I want to do is to take as many people with me as possible. Whether they are friends or families, I've even taken a few enemies with me. I remember once when I was a young man, I was in the Philippines. And this driver used to drive what's called a trike. It's like a motorized motorcycle with the little thing sitting in the back. And it cost like 10 pesos or 10 centavos, I think it was, to have him drive you up the Magsaysay, the main street. But instead of taking me up the main street, he takes me way off into the dark. And way out there over in the dark, he begins to tell me, give me all your money. Everybody knows sailors are rich and we got all kinds of money. Except for this one, I sent all my money to the bank, so I always had very few dollars on me. But hey, $20 is enough for them to kill you for. This is a very poor country. We're talking back in the 70s. And so he says to me, I know a lot of Filipinos in this area. If you don't give me your money, I'll call and they'll come down and kill you. About this time, I could see a security guard. They were under martial law, and they had what they called the integrated police. It was their military and their police were all rolled into one. And they had a very simple solution for settling any kind of problem. They would just simply shoot you. I remember one night there was a curfew at 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, you were not on the street. And as I was a shore patrolman, my job was to get all the sailors back to the base before 10 o'clock. And so I was standing on the bridge that separated the base from the city of Olongapo. And this 12-year-old boy comes shooting across the street, leaving behind these trash cans and trying to get back to his house. In the middle of the street, the machine guns, they just simply turned, and those policemen gunned him in half. Why? 12 years old. He wasn't supposed to be out after 10 o'clock, and they didn't mess around. So this man says, give me your money, or I'll call, and my friends will come down and murder you. I look up the street, and I point out that policeman to him. I said, you give me your money, or I'll scream, and that man will turn around and shoot us both. He said, you wouldn't. I said, listen, if I died right now, I'm on my way to heaven. How about you? I led him to Jesus in the dark, and then he drove me back up to the street. I've won a few enemies. Listen, we are in this race, not just to win it, but we are in this race to pull people along with us. This race that we call life. I am on my way to heaven, and nothing will change that. But what I can do is take as many people with me as I can. When you're in this race, you notice these guys, you don't look side to side. You look straight ahead. Why? In the race, if I look this way, first of all, it's going to slow me down. That simple movement will slow my muscles down. And then the second thing, it could discourage me because I see this guy catching up to me. Or I could notice, hey, he's just a little bit ahead of me. I'm not as fast as I thought I was. In the race, you keep your eyes forward. You always look straight ahead. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. If I run my fastest, run my hardest, I'll win. And so in the race, you don't look side to side. You stay in the race. You notice that? In the race. We are in the race. My job is to get myself and as many as I can to heaven. That's my race. And so as I come behind, as I'm looking forward, I'm not looking side to side. I'm always looking at Jesus. The problem in our life, the reason so often we don't run successful is because we take our eyes off Jesus. And we look over here, maybe at these people. Hey, how come they're not running as fast as I am? And we stop and we turn around. Hey, look at those people. They're not doing what I'm doing. And the next thing you know, you're not doing it either. Because it's too easy to get discouraged. There are people who are discouraged as they look around and see those who aren't doing. And what does that cause us to do? It causes us to do nothing too. Keep your eyes on, I tell you this much, Jesus will always be doing something. He will always be bringing honor and glory to his Father. And if my eyes are on Jesus and if he is my prize, then I have got something to run to and something to run for. The high calling of Jesus Christ. Don't look side to side. It could discourage you. Don't get distracted by what's around. Hey, if I'm in a race and somebody falls, I don't care. My job is to get to the end. Once the race is all over, we go back and take care of our buddies. But we didn't stop the race because usually our school was competing against some other school. And if my poor buddy fell down and I stopped to help him up, that school beat us. And everybody looked at me like I did something wrong for having a compassionate heart. Don't look around. Keep your eyes on Jesus Christ and keep moving toward him. And then there comes the finish line. Finally, the finish line. I can see it. Stretching, Paul said, toward the finish line. Notice when these runners, everything is pushed forward. He has got his chest pushed out there. Why? Because he wants that tape. He wants to be the first to hit it and the first to break it. So you notice he doesn't run back like this. He runs forward with everything in front of him. He shoves his chest out as far as it will go. He is nearly flying. Look at his feet. He is full-blown in the air, pushing himself with that final thrust to break through that thing. He is given everything he's got at this moment. He is completely suspended. He has run his race. Every muscle, those things are ready to cramp up. But he knows he has got to go through that finish line. So he isn't stopping. You notice he didn't stop. You can't even see the finish line back over there. He's run clear past it. You ever watch them runners? You watch the Olympics when the summer comes up and watch how far they run past. They don't say, oh, I finished. They clear that thing. And our job is to run past. I'm not heading for the pearly gates. I'm heading for the other side. I am not going to stop at the pearly gates. I'm not going to stop until I get to the throne of God. And I don't know how far inside heaven that is. I suppose it could be a mile or two. But hey, I'll be able to run a mile or two when I get to glory. And I'm not going to stop till I see Jesus. I'm not going to stop till I see the Father. I'm not satisfied with seeing the pearly gates. I'm not going to heaven to see pearly gates. I'm going to heaven to see Jesus Christ. I'm going to heaven to see the Father on the throne. I'm going to heaven to enjoy Christ forever. It takes a little bit. First of all, it takes endurance. It takes endurance to run a race. You know, if you don't train for it, you won't make it. And if you don't train, you won't be fast. Now, I'll tell you, a short distance you can run a 50-yard dash. Most of us, when we first run a 50-yard, I didn't dash. Okay. When I first did the 50-yard, I'd get winded. Whew. 50 yards ain't all that far, but go ahead and run it. Like the middle of a football field over here to the goal line. Run that. At first, you're going to kind of jog it. And after a while, you'll get used to it. You'll be able to run it. And then eventually, you'll get to the point where you'll be able to run it full speed. You won't stop and then begin to slow down in the middle. You'll go lickety-split through that whole thing. Why? Because you have practiced that endurance, that which allows you to stay full speed. You ever watch these runners? They leave the gate full speed and they maintain full speed. That Usain Bolt is absolutely insane to watch that man run. He is, I don't care what he's running in. That man is lightning from beginning to end. But he doesn't do that just because he woke up one day and said, I think I'll run fast today. He's practiced. He has pushed those legs and exercised that lung and built those arms. Every bit of that man is designed for one thing, and that's to be fast. Everything about him is speed. The man is just absolutely phenomenal to watch. He is a tremendous athlete. People go to those games just to watch him run. But what if we were that phenomenal in our Christian life? What if people were interested to watch us run our Christian race? What if we could have the endurance to run full speed from the very beginning up until we get to heaven? But that comes with practice. That comes with Bible study. That comes with prayer. That comes with always keeping your eye on Jesus Christ and loving Him. There's one thing that will get to the end, and that's the love of Jesus Christ shed abroad in our hearts. Endurance requires practice. Lots of it. Lots of practice. I have practiced telling people of Jesus Christ my whole life. I remember the very first time I wanted to tell somebody of Jesus, and I couldn't get it right. You know the verse, for by grace are you saved, not of works? I reversed that thing. For by works are you saved, not of grace. And I could hear myself saying it wrong. But God was there, and the man, or the boy I should say, because I was in high school, the student that I was sharing it with heard it right. And when he looked at me and said, I'd like to receive Jesus too, he didn't get that from me. But see, the idea is in practice, God will allow you to get better and better and better. I don't usually get that verse wrong anymore. I've practiced at it. I've practiced telling people of Jesus Christ. I know my Romans road. I know my ABCs of bringing people to glory. I am comfortable. Anybody can stop and ask me a question anytime, and I'm comfortable with it. If someone was to ask me, how can I get to heaven? I could share with them in the middle of my sleep. I could walk into heaven. I have endurance to get to the end. Listen, life is hard. There's a lot of things that get in our way. There are a lot of reasons for me to quit. There have been a lot of reasons for me to quit. But I haven't. Because God has given me the endurance. He has given me the love of Jesus Christ in my heart. And so long as I stay in love with Jesus Christ, I'll continue to go. Sometimes people will ask me, the guys at work who've been married 10, 12 years, and they're finding it hard. And then they realize my wife and I have been married for 40. How do you do it? I said, here's the secret to a long marriage. Fall in love with your wife. If you're in love, the rest of it is a whole lot easier. If you're in love, you're not worried about perfection, yours or hers. When I get home, the first thing I do is look for my wife. I walk in the house, and if I see the kids, very first, you ask all my children, what's the first thing Dad says? Where's Mom? It's like, hey, Dad, I'm standing right here. Where's Mom? Once I know where Mom is, then everything else is fine. See, that's love. That's love. I'm not worried about my failure as a husband because I love my wife. This practice, this endurance, this development. To develop a body like that takes a lot of work. You could tell I haven't worked that hard. Okay? But it does. It takes tremendous amount of endurance. It takes a lot of practice. But once the practice and the endurance are there, the development comes. This guy could run a race today, he could run it tomorrow. Because he's practiced at it. He's got the endurance for it. Because he's got the development. His body, you could tell the body of a runner. Just like you could see the body of a dancer. You could see the body of a gymnast. When you look at a particular athlete, you know what it is that they are athletes in. If you saw a linebacker and you saw a quarterback and you saw the two of them standing next to each other, one of them guys is 400 pounds and has a belly like this. The other guy's tall, lanky, 6 feet, got arms that long. Quarterback. You know he ain't the linebacker. I mean, everybody be running through that line constantly. That's development. Your body is developed to fit what position you're playing or the sport that you are in. Swimmers look different than everybody else too. They have a different, why? Because they're using different muscles. They are developed different. So shouldn't Christians look like Christians? Shouldn't the development of our spirit be different from the development of anybody else's spirit? We should look like Christians. If Christian, my pastor used to say, then different. People should hear the things that we are anxious about. They should notice the things that we want are different than theirs. They don't hear me talk a lot about my new home, my new truck, my new this, my new that. They hear a lot about Jesus Christ. And that's important. We prayed this morning right before service started for a young man that passed away, 25 years old. Had a future. In fact, he was 6 weeks away from graduating from the Sheriff's Academy in LA. He had a future, had a family. One thing he did not have was a tomorrow. 25 years old in a motorcycle accident. Takes his life. That's where we live. You don't know the people you know will be around tomorrow. So we've got to tell them of Jesus Christ today. We have got to stay focused in our race so that we can finish our race and bring not only our own victory, because my victory is assured. Whether I'm fast or slow doesn't matter. I am on my way to heaven and nothing will change that. Jesus Christ has died for my sins. He has washed them all away. I've asked Jesus Christ for forgiveness. He has given that to me. He gave that to me way back in 1970, October 3rd, 10 minutes to 8. And I've never lost it. Can't lose it because it's held by Jesus Christ. And my love for him has kept me running this race all these years. So we have to have the development. People have to be able to look at us and say, are you a Christian or you are a Christian? My daughter and I were years ago, we were over at Stater Brothers, and somebody came up to me and they said, are you a Christian? I wasn't preaching in the middle of the aisle or nothing. When I first visited this church, Richard turned around at the end, looked at me and said, are you a pastor? You want a pastor here? See, we should be developed so that people mistake us for Christians all the time. No one would mistake me for any other religion but Christianity. Because there's one thing I talk to people about, Christianity. And so it's important that we have this development. People could tell that man's a runner. When you see him, and you probably would suppose he would win a race or two. Now, if I was to stand next to him and I said to you, guess which one of us just won the race? How hard would it be for you to guess? Unless I cheated and tripped him or something. And then he'd probably still get up and beat me. Why? I'm not developed like that because I'm not a runner. I look like this because I'm a Christian. And if you see my soul and you see my desire for Jesus Christ, you would know that. And that's what I want people to see in us. I want us to see that we are too engaged in a race. But our race is that direction. And our job is to bring people with us. Let's conclude then with these ideas. Paul said that his goal was to know Christ, to be like Christ, and to be all Christ had in mind for him to be. That's a goal worth running to. My goal is to know him. My goal is to be like him. And my goal is to be everything he wants me to be. How do I know what God wants for me if I don't talk to him? How do I know I'm going down the right path if I don't ask him? I remember years ago, men of the church came to me and said, I think it's time for you to leave. And I said, I don't think so. I said, because I heard God call me here and I haven't heard him tell me to leave yet. I'm still here. Why? Because I have spoken enough with God to know what he sounds like. I followed the Lord close enough to know what direction he's going. I have kept my eye on him and he has not moved. He is still in the same place. And he's still calling me forward. And so I am still running my race. And I am trying to be not what I want to be or what somebody else wants me to be. My responsibility is to be what he wants. I wanted to be a fireman. If I couldn't be a fireman, I was going to be a policeman. But nobody wants to be a cop. You all want to be a fireman because everybody loves the fireman. Nobody likes cops. But everybody loves firemen. But that's not what God called me to. God called me into the pastorate. It's not something I would have ever considered for myself. Speaking in front of people wasn't something that came naturally to me. I remember when Nano didn't want to be a music man. Mikey, scared to death to do this. Now guess what? I'm up here trembling like this. Nano's back there like this. And Mikey's over here shaking like that. But we're all doing what God told us to do. God said, I want you to lead the music. I want you to sing. I want you to praise me through music. I'm glad he didn't ask me to do that. I got the easiest job. All I got to do is preach. But I want to be what he wants me to be. The goal. This goal took all of Paul's energies. This is a good example that we have been looking at these runners. Good for us. See, we shouldn't let anything take our eye off the goal. If that runner keeps his eye fixed on the finish line, you need to keep your eye fixed on the finish line. What is your finish line? Your finish line is to know Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Let me ask you this question. How well do you know Jesus? Could you pick Him out in a crowd? Suppose some false Jesus came. You know how many people fall for false Christs every day? There's always somebody in Waco, Texas, or in Jonestown saying, I'm the Messiah. I'm the Messiah. And there's thousands of people who clamor to these people. Every day there's a new Messiah. And people don't know Jesus Christ, so they don't know the difference between the true and the false. Reverend Moon over there in Korea said, I am the Christ. But my Bible says this same Jesus that you saw go up, you will see come in like manner. Reverend Moon, how did you get here? And by the way, are you sure you're a Jew? Because Reverend Moon, you don't look Jewish to me. The same Jesus that I saw go is the same Jesus that'll come back. You don't look Jewish to me. I remember when I ran into His people when I was just a young Christian. But I knew that much. I knew He wasn't Jewish. And I knew He didn't come back the same way He left. I know Jesus. And sir, you're no Jesus Christ. So don't let anything take your eyes off the goal of knowing Jesus Christ. With single-mindedness as an athlete in training, we must lay aside everything harmful and forsake anything that may distract us from being effective Christians. I lay aside all those things. I don't worry that I'm not perfect. My job isn't to be perfect. My job is to know Jesus Christ and to be what He wants me to be. And He's already told me you won't be perfect. In this flesh there is no good thing. Okay, for a moment there, I thought I was failing. Well, yeah, you're a failure, but I can do all things through Jesus Christ, which strengtheneth me. I can run this race, and I can win my race. So our question then is finally simply this. What is holding you back? What keeps you from being the example to others of what a Christian is? I've already told you it's not a matter of your perfection. It's just a matter of your loving Him. And if you love Him, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, that you love one another. And what was His plea for us but that we should love one another as He loved us? But what is the first requirement of all of that? That we first love Him. That we first love Him. When I put my feet in the stocks, I got into this race because I wanted to get to that destination. When I was a young man in high school and I stepped onto the track, I stepped onto that track for one reason. I stepped onto that track because I wanted to win. I didn't step on the track and say to myself, gee, I hope I come in last today. I got on the track because I fully hoped, fully expected that I would win that race. That those hurdles that sat in front of me, I would clearly be able to climb over them. I'd be able to run my race. You ever run hurdles? It's a tricky thing to do. You get your timing off and guess what? It's easy to go down in those hurdles. And when I was young and running those hurdles, man, I ran them. Why? I was practiced at it. I was developed for it. Back then, I was ready for that race. But now as a Christian, I am ready for this race in life. And I have determined to let nothing hold me back, not even myself. I am, after all, my own worst enemy. There's only one person that can ever stop you, and that will always be you. No one has ever stopped me, and I refuse to get in my own way. So I keep pressing toward the mark of my high calling of knowing Jesus Christ. And I want to know Him better and better and better. I want to know Him better tomorrow than I know Him today. But I'm glad I know Him better today than I did yesterday. What new thing did you find out about Jesus? What new thing are you hoping to discover about Jesus Christ? No wonder you can't run the race. You couldn't pick Jesus out in the crowd. Let us run our race. Let us keep our eyes on the Lord Jesus Christ. You will succeed.